For me, the United States has always been one of the biggest enigmas in world rugby. I just don't understand how they haven't taken this to a next level. If you have a look at their past and how rugby is actually pretty prominent across their colleges, you would be shocked to not see more results on the field. And yeah, I understand that they have a culture that's dominated by American football and basketball and baseball, but surely there's still enough room for rugby to really shine. Just have a look at the small volumes of players that a lot of the other countries have. You would think that the US would be able to easily compete pretty successfully on a global stage, but for some other reason, it just keeps being a miss. Their World Cup history is one of the biggest testaments to this. So over the years, they've just missed the 95 World Cup and the 2023 World Cup. But out of all of the rest of the ones that they played in, they played 29 games, but they only won three of those games through all of the years, going back to 1987. Their biggest real rival is actually Canada that they have locally, and they do play in the Pacific Nations Cup, but there they've struggled to actually put together any decent performances. If you have a look at 2024, they finished fourth. 2025, they finished fifth. And the best performances that they had over the years were quite a couple of years ago. You have to go back to 2014 and 2019, respectively. There they finished third in the tournament. Over the years, they have regularly put up decent performances against some of the other minnows in the world, but they've struggled to really uh, put up any dominant performances against the top countries in the world. It doesn't look like they really pitch up for those games. We can see a lot of fight in a lot of the other smaller nations. For example, the way that Portugal fought back to beat Fiji in the last World Cup, and the way Japan were able to beat South Africa, just because they were motivated enough to actually get that done. Over the years, the US have picked up a couple of wins, however. If you go back all the way to the Olympics, where in 1920 and 1924 they won gold medals because then it was still an Olympic sport. They actually beat France in 1924. So I know that's 100 years ago. So I'm guessing most of those players aren't playing anymore. But along the way, they were also able to beat Fiji. They beat Japan recently, both in the past couple of years. And in 2018, they actually beat Scotland. Their highest ranking in world rugby, however, in the century came in 2019 when they were able to get up to position 12. For the rest of the time, they've always been floating between position 15 and 20. And now here's where the weird part comes in. If you have a look at what they've got in place as infrastructure on their side. So in the professional side, they had pro rugby, started mid 2010s, I think 2014 or 2015 it started, but it failed pretty quickly. And then they followed that up with MLR. And MLR has been a bit of a up and down league for them. It's getting better and it's getting more professional and the games are getting more competitive. They've got management teams in there that were able to grow the MLS to what it is now, but they've struggled to get the same kind of traction for the MLR. Now, if you have a look at the colleges, that is where things get very weird and interesting. If at last count from when I saw it, I think there are 1,100 colleges that actually play rugby in the US. And if you look at that, it is actually a ridiculous amount of players to have across the US. But clearly, there's a massive disconnect between those players in colleges actually identifying top players and getting them through to the MLR level. In the last couple of years, they have started a draft system similar to what they have for the other professional sports to get those players in from the big schools. But a lot of the other players are just completely ignored. So the pathways for players after college just dies completely. South Africa had a similar problem for quite some time, and with their really strong schools, they struggled to get that uh, bridge that gap to get people into the professional ranks. Varsity Cup has been very successful in South Africa, where players then get another chance to play on a national stage, and then for them to go into professional ranks, with lots of players playing both locally and abroad after they finish with their college or university education. But that is something that just has fallen by the wayside in the US for some other weird reason. I hope that's something that they can figure out. And just a large point on that college rugby, they actually started way back in 1874 with that. So they've been playing it for 150 odd years, but still there's not enough traction on it. So it's really an odd one. The most popular of all of the players, however, that they've had in recent times has to be Todd Cleaver. He's played 76 times for the US, and he was an absolute legend. He was recognized the world over, and people loved watching the guy play. With the type of heart that he played, you had to respect the way that he approached it. These days, it's difficult to find many players that actually play with the same type of approach for that US national team. The biggest point scorer of all time has been Mike Herkus with 465 points, and Bahia Anatoni is the top try scorer on 26 tries, which puts him in a league uh, not too far off the top try scorers in the world. And it's a very impressive haul to have for any national team. Currently, their captain is AJ McGinty, and he has been their captain for a while now. So he brings some stability to the squad. They do have a very strange mixture of players in their squad at the moment. So 20 of their players have less than 10 caps, and then the vast majority of them are actually in the later 20s and early 30s. So they would only be good for this World Cup cycle and not for the one in 2031. So hopefully, with an eye on that tournament that they will be hosting in 2031, they will start to build up that squad and see if they can't strengthen that dramatically. Because otherwise, they are just going to be quickly eliminated when it comes to the 2031 World Cup. And it's going to be a bit of an embarrassment if you don't even put in a semi decent performance at the World Cup that you're hosting. The squad mainly consists of players from the MLR, with a handful playing in England and in France. And then the vast majority of the players outside of that actually just play at club level, which is very strange. With the teams that they've got in the MLR, surely they should be enough to have these players as part of those rosters. If you have a look at Wales and you have a look at Scotland and you have a look at Ireland, that ranges from 2 professional teams in Scotland, 3 in Wales, and then 4 in Ireland that make up the core of their national teams. They have a few players playing in other places, but that is basically what's feeding their national teams. So if you've got a couple of more in your professional league, why don't you have all your players in there? They do, however, have a very strong coaching core. And I think that might help them, hopefully, to build up some continuity. So their head coach, Scott Lawrence, is from the US, and he's leading the charge there to take them into the 2027 World Cup. Lana Jeremia heads up the attack, and he is a New Zealander, of course. And I think he will be a really valuable asset for them going into the tournament. Making sure that the lineouts and the defense works. That falls on Nick Easter, the former England international, and that should bring some more diversity in their gameplay and their approach to their gameplay as they head into that World Cup. And then managing the scrums is Blake Bradford, the South African, with that combination of coaching staff that they have in place. They should actually be able to build up to a decent level. Hopefully, they can keep the core of their squad going, get a lot of those players with caps under the 10 mark, get them to double digits over the next couple of months, and be able to actually play against a few top nations. If they're able to do that, they might actually have a bit of a better run in the tournament. They do have a very difficult group, though. They're playing with France and with Japan and then Samoa. And I think they will be fighting it out for third place against Samoa. The likelihood of them putting up any decent performance against Japan and France is very unlikely. And it should be France and Japan actually going through in that group. But we'll see how they do against Samoa, because that'll be most of their World Cup in my opinion.